Hi, welcome again to Off the Page. I'm Leslie Choice, and my guest today is David Cruz. He and Alison Griffiths of Milton, Ontario are writers who went out into Canada, journeying into the heartland to write a book called Working the Land. Welcome to the show. Now, this is a book. Two writers go looking for something. It's Canadian and it's not urban. What is it that you were seeking?
Well, we're writers who write about people and good stories, so I guess that's the first thing we were looking for, is interesting people and interesting stories. And I'm delighted to say we found it all over the country. I mean, up north with Russians prospecting for diamonds, that was an absolute thrill. I mean, 100 miles from anything, and you're with 5 Russians looking for diamonds in the north of Canada.
Sounds like a good adventure.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, and I was being paid to do it.
There's some physical thing there about all these people that you interview, the physical thing of the relationship between the person and the land, the environment that they're working in. That is different from the rest of us who live in urban or semi-urban environments.
Yes, it is. And one of the things that we set out to do in the book was to develop intimacy with these people. And we did that by actually going and working along with them, and often staying for a week or so in their houses or near them, so that we could actually do what they were doing. And so I actually was out prospecting for diamonds with these Russian geologists who are phenomenally educated people, people of our age, who still believed that they were out and should be out in the field practicing what they were teaching back in Russia.
Aside from people who are way up there, far away, rooting around for diamonds, what about the rest of Canadians? Are we still psychologically, at least, rooted in the land, or have we moved away from it?
Oh, I think so. I think all of us have a kind of a yearning for the land, whether it's just to go out and visit people at a cottage, or it's a surprising number of people still have a connection, a family member that owns a farm, or a father that was a farmer, or a grandparent that was a farmer. I think we're very deeply tied to the land, and a lot of our mythology is based on this frontier land-based idea of things.
Yeah, I think Canadians still hold on to that identity of the open spaces, the empty spaces, the north, or the rural parts of Canada. I guess even if we don't go there. Now, I always think of farmers, of course, if you're going to talk about an individual and a relationship to the land that he works on. You went to PEI in particular. What did you discover about potato farming on Prince Edward Island?
Oh, it was fascinating. I mean, a lot of people's initial reaction to, you're writing about potatoes.
Yeah, that's right. You say fascinating. Potato farming, huh? Yeah.
Well, the potato itself is kind of interesting. It's a very fragile vegetable. That's the first thing I didn't know. I assumed you could just throw the thing, anywhere and leave it and it'd be fine. But no, it's very fragile, and it requires a lot of careful handling, very susceptible to diseases. But the really fascinating stuff to me was the farmers themselves. We talked to everybody from very small organic farmers to some of the huge conglomerates, and they all have a commonality, trying to eke this living out of the land. Now the big guys are making great money, but some of the smaller guys are really on the border. And then there's these issues of pesticides and genetic engineering, and we talked to environmentalists. One of the most fascinating ones was Sharon Labchuk, who is a sort of one-woman crusade against pesticides on PEI.
Yeah, what's the big fear about pesticides? The obvious thing, they're going to maybe kill off some birds, a couple of animals. Does it go deeper than that?
Well, I think the fear, as she would express it, and I think a number of farmers privately feel this way, so they just don't know what the pesticides are really doing. They don't know if they can control them. They don't know the long-term impact of it. And I'll just give you a small example, and I think everybody knows there's been some fish kills in PEI this summer that scared the daylights out of everybody. Yes. Everybody's seen these massive sprayers that spray the pesticides. Well, you're supposed to only spray those in very small wind conditions. Well, on PEI, it's always windy, so you've got to spray all the time, basically, even if the wind is a little bit higher than it should be. So where does that go? And because of the pressures on the potato farmer to get as many potatoes into your land as you can, they've built them right up to the edges of roads, of schools, of houses and subdivisions. And of course, PEI has got housing all over the province. So this spraying is hitting everybody, and they're wondering what's happening.
And you get the farmer in the middle between environmentalists who would prefer he does nothing at all and farms organically, and then the competition that that sort of makes it impossible for him perhaps to survive unless he does everything that he can possibly do to get the highest yield from the land there. That must be a big psychological problem for a farmer.
I think it is. I think that the sense of feeling under pressure, all of them felt that, whether it's an economic pressure or whether it's a pressure of simply doing the right thing. Am I doing the right thing by using this seed, this genetically engineered seed, or by using this pesticide, or by using this fertilizer? Because really they don't have a lot of information. You know, the fertilizer company will tell them one thing, the environmentalist may tell them another. It's a little hard to decide, and often you don't have alternatives, because that's one thing I really found is I don't think there's as much diversity in methods as there may have been 20 years ago. You've got a few organic types that are really struggling to make a living, and we talk about them in the book, Fascinating People. And then you've got a kind of a middle level who are doing okay, but they could be wiped out by any kind of disaster. And then you have the big corporate types. And outside of the organic type, they're all farming in the same techniques. So you don't get much innovation. It's all coming down from the top now. A new fertilizer comes down, everybody uses it. A new pesticide comes out, everybody uses it. There's not much room for change there.
And it sounds a bit like business. What about that old image that's stuck in my head of the farmer who believes in the land, who walks out into his field and picks up a handful of dirt and smells it, and has this almost spiritual connection to the place. Does that still exist, or has that been rooted out of that profession?
Yeah, it very much still exists. We met a good number of farmers, particularly the organic farmers, but some of the mid-sized farmers. Elmer McDonald is a farmer on PEI who has a 600-acre, 800-acre farm, which is small now. 10 years ago, it would have been considered huge, but now it's small. And he's very much a person who loves the land. His father and grandfather were farmers, and there's this sense that you're husbanding something for the future there.
Yes.
Now he feels a pressure. There you want to raise your children. You want to pay your mortgage. You want to and he works with his brother on the land. So it's got to support two whole sets of families. So there is a pressure there. If you go organic, you're taking a little bit of a risk. You have to cut back on your standard of living, and it's quite something.
Wow. Do you think that there always will be room for the little guy in this new world of agri-business that exists out there?
Well, frankly, no. I mean, I think that PEI is really an example of that. You've got the big corporations, the Irvings, the Cavendish Farm, the McCains, coming in. Some of them are buying up land. The average price for land has gone from $500 or $600 an acre up to $3,000 or $4,000 an acre. And a farmer starting out today at that kind of price, a potato farmer, would have a very, very difficult time making a living, if they could at all. The people that already own some land are doing okay because their average price is much less. They may have bought land 10 years ago. They could still buy some land now at $4,000 an acre and still make a go of it. So with potato farming, I think it's pretty much a gone thing where you can say, well, I'd like to be a potato farmer.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tragedy. One of the people you interviewed there, Barry Cudmore, PEI farmer, calls it a high-stress occupation. How does that stress manifest itself in families' lives?
Well, certainly there's a suicide rate there. One of the farmers we talked to, his father had killed himself, and nobody really knows the reason. He was a very successful farmer. Good family life, a religious man. So, all of the factors, the outside factors you could look to, were all satisfied there. So it must have been the stress of the farming. Wow. And I think that that's an issue. I think that, there's a certain amount of alcoholism among farmers, and nobody really knows how it compares with the population at large, but you would expect it to be much less. I think that would be the popular stereotype.
Sure, the old myth of back to the land, you get up maybe at sunrise and you leisurely work out in the fields. It's not that.
Well, absolutely, and people seem surprised when I tell them that farmers have cell phones and that sort of thing. Well, of course they do. I mean, that would make their job a lot easier, but the idea that, yeah, he's got a cell phone and modern faxes and computers, that doesn't seem right to some people,
How do these farmers bounce back from disasters? Because when I think of farming in Canada or the United States, I think of endless string of disasters. If it's out on the prairie, you have a drought. If you're in Manitoba, you've been flooded out. In PEI, I guess here in the East, it could be potato disease can come through 1 year and take everything, right?
Blight.
Yeah.
Blight, as they call it. Yes, well, exactly. I mean, you must be resilient. You must be an optimist to be a farmer. And, you know, the government helps, but it's something in your spirit that keeps you coming back. I mean, when you think about it, you plant that seed in the spring and you pay up front for it. You know, you're not, nobody's giving you free credit for the year, and you don't know whether it's going to come up in the fall. And if it comes up, you don't know whether you're going to be able to sell it at you know, market prices. You may still lose money. I mean, how many people would be able to manage in that kind of existence? You're gambling every step of the way.
Very difficult. Tell me a bit more about these uneasy relations between the environmental activists and people who work directly in the land, whether it's the farmer with the pesticide or whether it's someone who's interested in mining. I mean, there's a real squaring off of interest there.
Well, it's more on the surface in PEI than anywhere else I've seen. I think it's partly because the population is spread out in the province, and you know, you see the farming operation all the time. You can't go anywhere without seeing the spraying in the summer, because it's done a lot. It's done almost every day in July and August, and you know, you just see it. In Ontario, you very rarely would see a farming operation going on. So that's number one. It's right there.
Right in your face.
You just cannot not see it. Number two, there is a lot of disease in PEI. There's you know, nobody's got a definitive answer to this, but there appears to be a higher cancer rate, higher asthma rate. You know, nobody knows quite why. You're getting these fish kills. There's speculation that the air quality is not as good as it once was. Again, nobody knows for sure because there isn't the testing going on that there ought to be for this sort of thing. So it's right in your face. You know, even though there's a relatively small environmental movement there, people are wondering already. Along comes Sharon Labchuk, a single woman with children in her early 40s, about 4 or 5 years ago. Grew up in the Maritimes and then came back with her children. Had no intention of becoming an environmental activist, was interested in those issues, but was wondering what was happening with this spraying. You know, she'd look at houses to buy for her children or rent for her children, and she'd see the spraying. So she started asking questions and didn't get answers that satisfied her, and then became more and more interested, and the farmers would say obsessed with the issue, and couldn't get answers. You know, she'd go to the farmers' meetings and say, well, you know, what about this? You know, what is this spray doing, and how come this one's banned in the United States and we're using it here, and that kind of thing.
Partly because the farmers have been told it's okay, you shouldn't worry about this from the corporations, right?
Well, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and they're using it, so, you know, you're not going to say, well, I'm using something that's bad. And so there was a very, very sharp defensiveness right away, and she was surprised at this. And I you know, probably shouldn't have been surprised. I think I might have been defensive if I'd been a farmer in that circumstances. So I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, she and a small group, 3 or 4 people, went onto the ferry from Moncton to Summerside, or actually into the parking lot on the Moncton side, and tried to pass out flyers, just describing what they saw as the situation. Now, she has a real flair for words, so it was quite sharp and pointed what she wrote. It was just a mimeograph sheet, though, nothing fancy.
Yeah. And what was the reaction?
Well, they got thrown off the property, and you know, maybe threw out a few dozen copies. But this one incident has grown into a plethora of incidents, as none of which are true.
Yes.
I mean, you can talk to people all over the province about what Sharon Labchuk has done. I mean, they supposedly blockaded boats coming onto the...
She created her own
Yeah,
myths
it's just the whole thing. I think it's an example of how divisive and polarized this thing is. And she's come to the point where she's hated by a number of farmers. Though she's very soft-spoken, she can be strident at times. But I think it's, again, an example of the divisiveness. So one of the neat things she did, I thought was neat as a writer's point of view, she had a picture taken of her sitting naked. She's got very long hair, in a freshly plowed potato field with a gas mask on it.
Well,
now, you know, I
Very
thought that
simple.
was quite the image.
but a striking image.
A striking
that
image.
makes the point.
Now, it was printed in a small picture in the paper, and the farmers group got very antagonistic to it, wrote letters to the paper. So they reprinted it in a larger form. Became a cause, you know, and now it's a poster, and it's hung in art galleries, and it's been in books, and it's been everywhere, whereas probably if everybody had laughed a little bit about it, it would have gone away.
Okay, we're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be back with David Cruz right after this. Hi, we're back. Our interview today is with David Cruz. He has a book called Working the Land. And before we leave PEI, one more question about the churches on PEI. Have they taken any stand on this issue that involves farmers and environmentalists?
Well, the churches per se, no, but we heard a couple of stories about how the Sharon Labchuk, who we've been speaking about, was actually denounced in church by members of congregations. Now, that didn't set down well with other farmers, and they took the people aside and had harsh words with them. But it just shows how high the emotions are. And I mean, Sharon herself had been collared a couple of times trying to distribute leaflets in farmers' gatherings, and you know, fairly roughly treated.
Okay, let's move far, far away to the far north in Canada. I guess the Northwest Territories, where you went to speak to people who are looking for diamonds.
Yeah,
Who
isn't
are
that
they?
something? Diamonds in Canada,
Well,
you know, this is
it's a long way from potatoes and PEI.
Oh, yeah, and we're lead and nickel, and you know, that maybe some gold, but diamonds, that's not Canada.
How do they do it?
Well, according to the research, actually, this turns out to be a terrific place for diamonds. They're all over the place up there, and in fact, you can actually find them on the ground if you know what to look for. But they
Yes.
don't look like diamonds when you find them on the ground.
Diamonds in the rough.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, in fact, they may even be a different color than you expect. It started about 11 or 12 years ago when a commercial diamond pipe was found. And these pipes are molten lava that's been forced up out of the earth. They cleave through the diamond zone, which is about 100 miles deep, and bring the diamonds up with them. And one pipe, which could be anywhere from 15, 20 feet across to a kilometer, can be the basis of a whole mine in and of itself. There's so many diamonds in there.
And it's so valuable that you
It's so
don't need a
valuable,
huge
yeah.
quantity of this resource to
Well, that's
make
right.
money
They're
from it.
high quality diamonds as well, higher quality than some in South Africa, for instance. So there's actually a mine in operation that just went into operation last year that vaults us into 5th or 6th place in the world in diamond production. And there's another going through environmental hearings. There could be as many as 10 mines up there.
Are they originally found, though, by individuals, hot shots that just go out on their own, wander off into the wilderness with some equipment and some good clues and find
Well,
these diamonds?
the first one was found by a couple of guys that were basically prospectors, geologists. They had a degree, but they were out there kicking rocks.
Yeah.
And they knew what they were looking for. This one gentleman, Charles Fipke, who is credited with finding the first mine, had worked in South Africa. So he knew what to look for already, but he was spending years up there, and he pretended he was looking for gold the whole time, so nobody really realized what he was doing. And he finally found this mine after many, many years. And then once he found it, you know, they do drilling and the whole deal to prove that it's economically feasible.
Yeah. What's life like in a mining camp, or for the individual who's out there searching for diamonds? What is his life like? He's far from town, right?
Yeah, he's far from town, but it's pretty nice compared to the old days. Now, they work long hours. They may be out in the field 12 hours, but they come back and they've got showers and cable TV, satellite phones.
Oh, okay. So it's not quite Jack London
No,
anymore.
it's not Jack London. Some camps are pretty rough. You know,
Mhm.
they're tents and so on. But the one that I spent a week in a camp for a junior miner, a wind spear that's out looking for diamonds. So this is right on the raw edge of things. And what's interesting about them is that they've done something quite unique. They've brought Russians in to do the geology for them, to do the prospecting. And these guys are unbelievable. They're the top diamond scientists in Russia, but, well, they've got jobs still, but they don't get paid.
Yeah.
So they take their vacation time to come over here, work for the junior companies, and teach them how to find diamonds. And of course, Russia has, you know, huge diamond reserves. So I spent my days going out in the field with them, which was terrific. That was fascinating stuff.
You also went to the West Coast and looked at, again, at something very different, again, that has to do with berries, growing strawberries and all kinds of berries out there in the Fraser Valley. What's that relationship between the farmers there and the, you know, the people and the land?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. You asked about starting up in agriculture to do with potatoes. Well, this is a little different story. The Sikhs, the majority of them have only come in the last 25 to 30 years. And there were Sikhs in the early 1900s, but the vast majority of them have come since partition in India. And many of them came with nothing. In fact, most of them came with nothing. Contrary to popular mythology that these are rich people coming to the country. And they started off working as pickers and truck drivers and all kinds of menial work. And today they own about 30% of the Fraser Valley, which is the richest farmland in the country, just through hard, determined work. Now, they're willing to put up with conditions that most Canadians wouldn't. They work phenomenally long hours. And the berry picking plant that was attached to the Lolly, the Sikh family that I lived with, it's like nothing you've ever seen. It's quiet. There's 60 people working. You don't hear a word. You know, there's no sense of acrimony. Everybody's there on time. There's no trouble with any staff. They want to work more hours than they're given, not less. You know, so it's an absolutely unique situation, and you'll get whole families working. It's all minimum wage, but if you've got the father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and some children working there, you can make enough in a summer to buy your first piece of land.
Sounds like a good prospect. We're going to take another short break and close up here with David Cruz right after this. You've been watching Off the Page today. My guest has been David Cruz. We've been talking about Canadians and the relationship to the land. I guess you've let us in on a few surprises. Any really big surprises about where we are now with this relationship between ourselves and the land we live upon?
Well, you know, the biggest surprise, and this is not an earth-shaking kind of revelation about the country, but is how interesting these people were and how much fun they were to be with. Alison and I had a great time. I mean, it was the most fun of any book we've done. And I can honestly say that everyone we met could have been doing something else. So whether you're on a trap line in the north or being a PEI potato farmer, these people are all there from choice. So maybe there's hardships there, and maybe it's a way of life that's threatened, but it's a way of life they love, and they're there because they want to do it.
Do you feel any sense of tragedy that these are ways of life that will soon disappear from our country, maybe from the earth altogether?
Well, yes, I think that there is a sense of that in our travels and our visits. Though, you know, the spirit is there, so you have a feeling that they're going to find a way to continue. It's not so evident right now how the trappers are going to continue in the future, or the small PEI potato farmers, particularly the organic ones. But I have confidence that they're going to find a way.
Thanks for coming in town and being on our show.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thanks for watching Off the Page. I'll see you again next time.